that the concepts that I discuss as part of today's session are very near to the real life examples. Tunneling, pivoting are the most challenging aspects of any pen test that you conduct. It is not always possible for us to directly take access to the target mission and execute all commands to perform privilege escalation or something else. It is not that simple all the time. At first, we must understand the network structure. What are the defenses that are in place? Try to take advantage of enumerating all the perimeter devices as much as we can. And then look for simple ways to exploit one of these front-facing servers, then gain access to the internal servers. Based on the things that we discussed in the last class, we know how to compromise a Windows machine or else a Linux machine and gain an initial foothold. Do remember, attacks or exploitation is only possible if there are some vulnerabilities. Identifying that vulnerability and figuring out right exploit to gain initial foothold is going to take a lot of time. But once we are in, from there, the process becomes very simple, except for this tunneling concept. As we have discussed a bunch of different scenarios as part of the last session, what kind of defenses can be there in place and how that particular thing can affect our attack. Today, we'll start the session with the pivoting and double pivoting concepts, and then we'll move on to web application aspects, where I'm going to cover the standard process that you all need to know and understand to enumerate, exploit, and perform post-exploitation on a web server. Do remember, the organization's web server is the entry point most of the times for the attackers or criminals. If this particular server is located in the organization premises itself, then you may have a lucky chance on compromising it and also taking your route towards internal servers or client devices. In the last class, we have performed the Office Word related attack. If you can convince one of the employees in the organization and perfectly execute the social engineering attack, that becomes your initial point. Or else, the Drupal application that we have exploited in the last class can become an initial point for you. Don't always think like this is the only website or only service that is associated with this organization. More enumeration that you do, more entry points that you will find. This is the same exact thing that we did on smec.ac.in or Race Reva website. Somewhere we found that there is some usage of Jenkins. And there is WordPress. There is some other login page that we have identified as part of SMEC's ISP. So putting all those things together, we must plan executing the actual exploitation step. So enumeration is the key. Enumeration is the key. Enumeration is the key. 80% of your duration must spend on this enumeration itself. Once you gain initial foothold, everything becomes very simple if there are certain misconfigurations that are in place. So today's session is going to be yet another core part for this course or the module. One is network pen testing, internal, external, that we already did as part of the previous sessions. And as part of today's session, we'll move on to the perimeter pen testing part. Again, do remember, it is not only for perimeter pen testing. So based on the syllabus, according to theory, the contents will be organized to make your process of learning simple. But in real life scenario, you must be able to link them together. So that is what we are concentrating on from day one itself. Today also will follow the same exact pattern. Say in the last class, we actually observed how we can compromise a Windows machine and take advantage of escalating our privileges. In that scenario, if that device is part of an Active Directory environment, that becomes your initial point, and from there we'll perform some domain enumeration or dump the hashes using hash dump after elevating your privileges, cracking those hashes with the help of John the Ripper. You will be able to find out the password. Using that password, you can make connection to any of the devices on that network. Unfortunately, we were not able to do that on our actual lab setup, but you have your iLabs in hand. So I want to leave that as a assignment for all of you to please make sure that you jump onto the Active Directory section of iLabs and then do those two practicals that are present there. That thing follows the same exact pattern that I've explained, excluding the last steps like dumping hashes, cracking hashes, and using those hashes to log into some other device. Anyhow, as part of Active Directory environment, domain controller is the core. Obviously, you will not have direct access to the domain controller. You must somehow look for ways to extract credentials from any domain machine or domain client or domain join, using which you can connect to the domain controller. Of course, gaining access to the domain client or domain joint happens through the social engineering attack, like Office Word thing, or starting with a web server. No matter whatever attack that you are planning to execute on the organization server or domain controller or some other computer, mostly it starts with their own web server. So the chances are the web server may be hosted somewhere on the cloud. That is entirely different story. We were talking about some service or server that is exposed to the internet from within the organization environment. So to demonstrate all the pivoting and double pivoting concepts, I'm going to set up my own lab and I will be doing it on my own lab. And you can also set up this lab without any trouble. And in case of material iLabs environment or iLabs platform, because of certain restrictions, there is only one possibility for you to do pivoting. There is no double pivoting present there. Of course, there is a point that they mention in the lab material. You can actually go through that and understand. So just to give you that idea, I will be demonstrating both pivoting and double pivoting. So there is nothing very extraordinary there. If you are able to pivot to one single device, we'll simply repeat that process again and again and again. So instead of separating them into multiple practicals and a few other practicals that are not part of iLabs, but for sure it will be there in the exam to test your actual research skills. So I'm going to make the job simple for all of you with the very first demonstration that we are going to do today. So without wasting time, let us directly jump onto today's part. And my dear friends, please grab your running notes and note down all different steps that I'm going to explain as part of this process. This particular practical looks a little bit complex, but if you are thorough with the concepts that I've already discussed in the last session, this becomes very, very, very simple. But please pay your complete attention towards each and every detail in the actual exploitation process. Please don't do the practical along with me. Please make sure that you note down all these steps in your running notes. And once the session ends, you can spend time whenever you are free to do the same exact practical. I will explain the lab setup process too, so that you can set up that lab environment and do the practice. So without wasting time, let's move on to the actual part for today's session. Port forwarding or tunneling is one of the most important aspects as part of any pen test, either for bypassing the defenses or for communicating with the devices that are generally not going to respond to all your messages, or else which are part of a different network. So taking advantage of compromising one of the devices on the network is really good. But we are not going to stop there. We must take advantage of using that as a pivoting point or the actual proxy and communicate with other devices through multiple interfaces that this particular compromised device may have. Do remember, every time you compromise a computer, you may not see multiple interfaces for it. As part of the post-exploitation process, not only privilege escalation, you must also enumerate interfaces, search for sensitive files, and take advantage of looking for other vulnerabilities that you can exploit. Anyhow, we have seen certain post-exploitation activities as part of the previous session, mainly focused on privilege escalation, but this particular session will take you through a different approach as part of the post-exploitation section. So once this particular course ends, I recommend each and every one of you to please prepare your own cheat sheet that really helps you a lot in understanding the methodology. So as mentioned on day one, it is not like the same exact vulnerability that you will come across every time. Whenever you are part of a pen test, it is a new challenge again, new environment, new systems, new operating systems, or new services. Few services you may never ever came across, right? You never heard of, and there can be certain applications that are really vulnerable, but you never exploited them. This is why practice is the key. So go on internet, search for different concepts, and try to grasp the actual methodology from those content. Of course, noting down all different exploits that you come across will help you later whenever you see the same exact vulnerability. For example, the Drupal one that we did, or Office Word application that we did, or else any other information gathering technique that we have learned before. I hope you all are thorough with the process there. If you are able to do it on your own lab environment, that doesn't mean that it will perfectly work on the target environment also. Because we have seen different settings or different defenses that are there in place may stop you from not performing this particular execution. Today, we'll demonstrate that in the web application aspect, and I will show you on how the defenses can stop most of the attacks that are happening on your web server or any other device. Mainly focused on the web server, but the same exact methodology can be applied for any server or any client device that is part of the network. Except for the services that these servers run can be slightly different from the client machines. So if you are taking advantage of exploiting external facing devices, one is to understand the firewall aspects that we already did. Please note down these points in your running notes. The initial thing that you must test is to see, are there any remote login services? Please note that every time when you are enumerating these external facing devices, for sure you will see some remote services. It can be remote login services. It can be like RDP, FTP, SSH, right? Or MySQL. Of course, MySQL or RDP are not that common, but FTP and SSH, there are more chances. If there is SSH, then you are lucky enough, because by simply taking advantage of this SSH service, the client utility, the SSH client software that is already part of your Kali Linux or any other Linux operating system, can be used for tunneling. Means every content that you are sending towards some internal device through this SSH connection that you establish to the external device will go in a secret fashion. I mean, everything is encrypted over there. Other side, I mean, the internal client will actually see that this communication is coming through the own organization device, right? There is nothing suspicious. You can even bypass any kind of defense, right? So that becomes very convenient way. So the initial step always is to look for these kind of services, try to figure out the credentials. If you can figure out credentials, then it's fine. If not, brute forcing is the second step. Please note down. The first thing is to guess the credentials. Pardon?
I'm sorry, sorry to interrupt. Since you said that port forwarding or tunneling, our bypassing firewall or any defense mechanism, how to bypass. So recently, the organizations are moving towards a zero trust or a private access kind of a thing, like only enable the services which is available. During those areas, how do we, what is that? Ensure that bypass those mechanisms. Just wanted to park it if that is going to come in the next session, but I have that question for this particular.
Yes. So very good question. As I mentioned, there are always ways to bypass and there are always ways to defend. If there is something that is protecting it, you must feel so happy as a penetration tester, right? And most importantly, the organization must feel that they are really secure. But remember one single point. The office word attack that we have discussed or any other social engineering attacks that you are going to perform by tricking employees inside organization, there is no preventive measure for that until and unless employees are really aware of different security measures, what they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do, right? So as you have mentioned, yes, there are a lot of defenses where you can actually guard against all these common entry points for allowing attackers to enter through these common services or these common points. But if you observe or go through certain case studies of recent cyber crimes, you can notice that most of those things are internal threats. It is all originating from within the organization itself. So tricking employees is one of the standard methods that attackers are picking. So in that way, there is no possibility for us to stop it until and unless we train them and make them understand on what are the things that they are allowed to do and what are the things that they are not allowed to do.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes, sir. I have certain what is that use cases, but we'll discuss that later. I don't.
Sure. But please note that it is always possible to defend against all different attacks that we are learning, but it is all because of misconfigurations that happen. And as Muthu, you said, there are certain measures that are taken only for few servers. There will be certain services that are still exposed to the internet, not with those defenses there, right? So that is why enumerating the organization related infrastructure is the key.
Yes, sir. It answers most of the things. As you said, rightly, misconfigurations, even if we put the best defense tools in place, but if it is not configured properly, yeah, there will be a way to bypass it. I do agree on that.
And one more thing is we can't always find misconfigurations, but from organization point of view, that configuration is for their convenience. As discussed in other sessions, previous sessions with a lot of examples, enabling RDP, we all know that there is a possibility that someone out there on the internet can connect to our server. We have also seen some servers and we already took access to those servers by simply browsing through Shodan. We found some public servers and we tried gaining access to that particular device. So we are allowing that service for our convenience, but because of not having enough defenses in place, not having additional configurations that you must do to block unauthorized users to gain access to the same exact service, are going to act as an entry point, right? So anyhow, the entry point is little bit tough. And as I mentioned, like gaining access to entry initial foothold becomes one of the troublesome aspect, right? And once you are inside it, you are done. And of course, as a professional pen test, we no need to dig deeper into this aspect. Why? Because most of your pen tests will be of internal, right? But if you are going to work for an organization where there is a good red teaming operation, then understanding these things are really good. Trust me, if you can go through these resources, so let me put up the names of those 2 books that you can actually refer. I hope you all heard about these books. Hacker's Playbook. How many of you have read these 2 books, Hacker's Playbook 3 and Hacker's Playbook 2? I think you all know how to get a free copy of this book. I'm not encouraging you to go and get a free copy of this book. It is not good to do that here, but these 2 books are really expensive. But you can get it. I hope you all know how to get a free copy. Yes or no?
No.
Hello?
Yes, yes, sir.
So you can go and get these 2 books, and these books really explore a lot of areas of external pen test, internal pen test, and especially this playbook 3 covers some Active Directory aspects too. So it is really good. I highly recommend everyone to read these books, right, to get the actual methodology right. So there is no standard prescription, but going on to these books, you will get some idea. And again, putting that onto your running notes, you may relate these things with some other aspects that you are already familiar with. So that's the only intention. So please note down Hackers Playbook 2 and Playbook 3. These 2 are must reads for every pen tester.
Sir, how to get a free book, sir?
Free book. Search for file type :PDF. This is where you must put all your CH knowledge into action. Copy, paste. If I'm lucky enough, first few entries will give you a free book. I'm extremely sorry. I'm not encouraging and I'm not against the author, but as you asked me, I'm giving you the tip. Okay. This is a 398 pages book, and this one is of 214. Very simple. And this is Playbook 3, if I'm not wrong. This one. I really love this book because most of the concepts that are covered are very much near to the real life scenarios. So you can see they show you how to compromise the and gain initial foothold, and also move towards the internal devices. Use bunch of different frameworks, not only Metasploit framework, right? Of course, most of these things are out of scope for this module or the course, but you can actually use PowerShell Empire or Cobalt Strike, or you can actually take advantage of Covenant, which is the actual framework that is used by red teamers in the real life scenarios. Most of these things work similar to what Metasploit does, but the mechanism behind is slightly different and eases the process of any red teamer. In fact, I think this can be a prescribed book for all of you when you are going with the pen testing concept, especially for CPENT. Okay?
Yep.
Pardon?
Yeah, Giant, I was just going to ask, as a part of this pen testing or what is this tunneling, are we going to learn how we are going to do the redirection on things like that?
Yes. Today, everything is related to that redirection. SH port forwarding, reverse port forwarding, dynamic port forwarding, local port forwarding. Are you looking for the same?
Yes.
Then for sure, you will enjoy today's session.
Yeah, recently I came across this in the office where one of the port was redirected to another port.
Yes.
And the application was not able to connect using that particular port. And
yes.
after 2 weeks of troubleshooting, we realized that it was pointing to another port. So
yes. That is why
to understand how it works.
Yes, very good. Thanks for that scenario. that is the reason why I mentioned in the last class, we must take advantage of analyzing network traffic. That is the only key to identify anything that is secretly happening. So by simply taking advantage of running an automated scanner, there is no way that you can find out all these points, because whenever an attacker or a criminal who is going to enter your organization, do you think that they don't know all these defenses? They know all these defenses. They know how everything works, right? So it is not like a tool that you can run and get it. Say, whenever I go with the CH training, students always think about running a tool is the magic, but no, not at all. Tool is tool. That's it. It is your skill. It is your methodology that helps you to figure out way to compromise, right? So running automated tools may not help you for sure. That is the reason why I think the explanation that I have given in the last session is coming into the play with your scenario, right? So understanding the network traffic, digging deep and observing the packets can really help you a lot. So why wait? Let's move on to the concept of tunneling, port forwarding and all. My dear friends, to simplify the process, I placed few missions that we are already familiar with, as we have already used Metasploitable 2 a lot. I'm going to replace that Metasploitable 2 with Metasploitable 3. And I think you can directly go on to the GitHub page and set up Metasploitable 3 devices by simply going on to the quick installation setup on the GitHub page of Metasploitable 3. Do a little bit of research and you can easily set up Metasploitable 3 devices. And once you set up Metasploitable 3 on your VirtualBox, you need to do certain configurations to these devices to make sure that you are able to pivot and double pivot. So to simplify the job, we have only 3 missions apart from our Kali Linux in this demonstration, but you can place as many missions as you want. Especially when you are going on to CPENT practice range, not the iLab environment. In the iLab environment, it is clearly seen that you will have 2 to 3 devices and they have dual homed and everything, same as what I am going to show today. But in practice range, you will have hundreds of missions, thousands of missions, who knows, right? So it is kind of a real life environment. You will never ever know how many missions are there. Few missions will respond, few missions will not respond, few missions will have services, few missions will have services that are exploitable, but you will not be able to exploit, right? So it is all real life hurdles. So you can actually set up multiple devices based on how good your system configuration is. So for this particular environment, I recommend a minimum of 16 GB RAM device, right? So for Windows, Metasploitable 3, 1 GB. For Metasploitable 3 Linux, you can go with a 512 MB RAM. That's more than enough. And the last one is HSVBox. So we already solved that HSBox, right? So this week we will be focusing on HSVBox. So I will be using this HSVBox for the entire web application related demonstration. I personally crafted that mission to make sure that all different things that are really important for a penetration tester to understand are part of the same exact mission. So you no need to worry about jumping between different devices to practice. So this one single box, right, is more than enough. But for the pivoting thing, this acts as our internal device. And this Metasploitable 3 Linux and Windows will have dual homed, means will have multiple interfaces and will configure the interfaces to make sure that we connect them together. So as you can see on my screen right now, I have my pivoting lab already set up with Metasploitable 3, Metasploitable 3 Bone 2 and HSVBox 1. And my dear friends, please make sure that you create a NAT network before you proceed with this practical. So in case of VirtualBox, I'm not sure about VMware. I'm going to show you how you can do it with VirtualBox. You can do a little bit of Googling to see how you can set up that NAT network on your VMware. So here on VirtualBox, simply head towards the settings panel. So on Mac, it will be somewhere at the preferences. VirtualBox preferences. In case of Windows, you will see file menu. Under file preferences, you can head towards this section and click on network and create 2 different NAT networks. For this demonstration, I created two networks that are of 10.10.10.0/24 range, as you can see here. And the other one is 10.20.20.0/24 range. So these are the two different NAT networks that I've created. And we'll use these things as a second interface for the internal computers, which cannot be accessed by the devices which are on a different bridged connection or else on the network or the internet. So after creating the NAT network, as demonstrated in this picture or as depicted in this picture, you can see Metasploitable 3 with two different interfaces. One is exposed to the external world. Scenario is like you are part of a different network or the internet, and this is the server that is exposed to the internet. In fact, Metasploitable 3 Windows have a lot of web services running. You can exploit any of those services to gain initial foothold onto this device. Anyhow, I'm not going to go on to each and every service. The methodology that we have used for HSBox in the last class can be simply applied here, right? And interestingly, there is Jenkins installed, there is WebDev working, WordPress installed, right? And tons of other remote login services are set up on this device. So it is really an interesting target. As a front-facing server, it is eligible because of these commonly seen public services on it. So we'll have a bridge network connection. I mean, one adapter on our bridged connection, and the other one is our NAT network that we created. Anyhow, I am picking it as 10.10.10 range. It is your choice on how you set up, right? So that is not going to make any kind of difference. So you need to note that this Metasploitable 3 mission must have two different interfaces. Let me go on to the settings panel of Metasploitable 3, and under NAT network, the first adapter is on bridge network connected to my local area connection. I mean my wide LAN cable. The second one is on NAT network. You can enable as many other two interfaces also if you want to connect them to other networks. Say you can set up your own corporate kind of environment and do the pen test on your own device, right? But for now, this is more than enough. So two different adapters that are enabled for Metasploitable 3 Windows. And the same thing should be done for Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu device also. Going on to the settings, you can see the first one is on 10.10.10 and the second adapter is on 10.20.20. It means Metasploitable 3 Windows is the only machine that can talk with Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu. Kali Linux cannot directly communicate with Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu or HSBox. This is the restriction. So until and unless you compromise this device, there is no way that you can send your communication or communicate with Metasploitable 3 or HSBox. Again, there are multiple techniques for this. For this one single practical, I will combine everything and I will show you how it works, right? So please clearly differentiate between techniques, each and every technique, and note down them in your running notes. So you can use any of those techniques that you want to use after gaining access to the initial device. So from Kali Linux, I'll be compromising this Metasploitable 3. This acts as the initial point for us. I mean, this acts as the first pivot, and using this as a pivoting point will compromise this Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu device. And as part of double pivoting, we'll compromise this one and we'll use this as a second pivoting point to communicate with HSBox. We are going to do everything from this Kali Linux machine only, compromising this external facing device. So this is kind of in real life scenario that we set up on our own VirtualBox virtual environment. And as usual, the last one is on 20.20 network, right? So you can check the network setting 10.20.20. There is no other adapter enabled. So this particular device will only communicate with Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu. So let's fire all these 3 devices and start our process of exploitation. I hope you all remember the techniques that we have learned as part of previous session using Metasploit, right? And also how we can enumerate vulnerable services and all. So I'm going to cut down all those unnecessary stuff as part of this particular section, just not to confuse you with everything in one single practical. So for this particular practical or this particular demonstration, we mainly focus on the pivoting concepts, right? And we'll extend. See, we are going to take advantage of Metasploitable 3, Metasploitable 2, and HSV box 1 for this demonstration. But I will not do anything more on this particular mission because in web application part, I will be exploiting this device, right? So you can attach all those practicals that we do as part of this one into this pivoting also. So if you have access, I mean, if you gain access to that mission, you can do whatever you want, right? So please note down the credentials. The default credentials for Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu and Windows devices are Vagrant as username and Vagrant as password. So to keep this particular practical simple and focus towards this pivoting concept, right? We are going to cut down all the brute forcing aspects or thinking about how you can identify usernames, how to how to guess usernames, passwords. So we already know all those aspects, so we are not going to get into those details again. But for this one, do remember the default credentials for both Metasploitable 3 devices are Vagrant and Vagrant. Anyhow, you can take advantage of doing a little bit of brute forcing with the known password list and username list. Even in the exams, no matter what kind of exam that you are going to plan from here on, it can be CPENT or any other certification related to pen testing. They are going to give you wordless, right? So you will be doing brute forcing using only those wordless, because as I've already discussed, a lot of brute forcing can actually confuse the services and also crash certain services. So we have seen a practical example in the last class. So doing brute forcing is not at all a good thing all the time. You must always look for some other alternates. If nothing works, then only go for brute forcing, right? So it is not like I know this technique, so I can easily apply. No, hello, you are a professional pen tester. You must think about the missions. You must take care of those devices and then pen test them, right? So as a pen tester, you'll not have rights to compromise their mission or else destroy their devices, right? We must always be on the positive side. We are not Red Hat hackers, or else we are not part of Red Team, or we are not Black Hat hacker, right? So let's quickly figure out what are the IP addresses of these devices. What we'll do in case of real life scenario, can anyone tell me? What is that we must do to find out IP addresses?
Net discover.
Very good. Net discover.
Ping
scan. Very good.
Nmap.
Nmap, network scan. So again, that depends on where you are. So if you are using net discover, you must be there inside the organization network. I hope you all know that, right? So it uses ARP. So you need to be part of the organization network. So let us imagine that we figured out this organization's server IP address by doing some network scan, right? And after identifying those IP addresses, we started our actual process. So in this case, Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu is there at 180 and the second interface is at 10.10.33. Anyhow, this is not so important for us right now. Let us focus on this particular IP address and proceed further. Anyhow, to make it simple, I already mentioned them in my presentation also. So let's use this to start the initial process. Somehow you must find out vulnerable services on Metasploitable 3 and exploit them. Again, the same exact process that I have given you in the last session. Try to enumerate ports, right? Don't try to run aggressive scans directly. try to take advantage of simple techniques to identify what can be the service that is running. So if it is a public server, you can expect that there is a chance of having FTP or SSH, right? Always go with simple scan. Let us test this. Like instead of going on all port scan, I'm going to see if there is SSH port open, right? I know that the device is up and running, so I'm going to skip ping. And I'm also skipping the name resolution because we are not using the domain name. We already have the IP address 192.168.0.108. If I'm not wrong, is it 108? 180, sorry. 180. I'm not doing version detection scan. I already mentioned on why will not do all these things directly. We can see that the port is open. Instead of doing version detection scan, I always take advantage of netcat 192.168.0.180 onto the port 22. We are able to see the SSH version. These are the simple techniques that you can apply, right? So simply going and running nmap scans will not always give you success. Say, let us do it on Race Reva and see what happens. Most of the scans that you do there will actually give you no success. So please note that, see, filtered. So there is a chance that this port may be opened, right? Or else you can imagine that the port is already closed. But what if I try netcat on the same? If the service is really open, right? We must be able to see some kind of banner. There is no banner. Now I can put this point in my notes, like this particular port is not open. So going with individual ports will really help you a lot. Don't directly run nmap full scan, right? Not because it is not good. In fact, you will have rights. You can go and do all those scans as part of pen test, right? So even if the target defenses trigger an alert, it's okay, fine. It's not at all a problem, right? So you don't need to worry about that aspect here because you are not a red teamer where you need to perform all these operations stealthier. As a professional pen tester, you can do all these things, and every log that is recorded, it's okay, fine. They are not going to hurt you, right? So the same exact thing I can try doing it for other ports too. 3306 is 3306 open over there. 3389. 21.
445.
445. I don't think 445 will be exposed. Right? So do remember, this is not the only thing that can give you confirmation. As you have public resources, you can go there and do it. So that is highly recommended. Instead of going on this, you can go on showdown.io, right? Log into showdown.io and specify your target domain. The chances are showdown.io will show you all the results that you need, right? So they have already performed all those aspects. So you can see the results there itself instead of you hitting them from your side. So this is always good, right? And since this .io, I think I already demonstrated this in the last class, information gathering. So everything is interrelated. So you can put all your previous skills and then do this search. So let me go and give the domain name. I think I need to provide IP address. So is it going to work? Yes, this is the IP address. So it is a Linux mission. Amazon 22 is open, right? So 80, 443, 80, 80. So I can try going on to that port numbers and see. I think we already did that. We are not able to see anything interesting. The chances are this Amazon instance is actually stopping us from connecting from external IP address, right? Anyhow, this is one simple way to get that information. The same way you can actually enumerate your Metasploitable 3 you want to, Windows also. Why Metasploitable 3 windows? Because this is firewalled device. So let me show you. This particular machine is there with firewall up and running. So don't consider these devices as something very lab environmented or else simulated devices. Yes, they are simulated, but they replicate a lot of real life instances also. I don't know why people don't show interest on practicing them in test lab. They always feel like I want to go on live website, live website. Hello, the live services are here also, right? So if you can compromise this, then obviously you can do that in the real life scenario too, right? So don't avoid practicing on these test missions. Trust me, if you can exploit each and every service that is running on this device, right? You are good enough at searching exploits and exploiting any kind of service out there on the internet, right? So there you will not see something very different in the real life scenario apart from these services. Maybe this particular service is outdated version, so you are getting exploit. So you must find some other way to exploit it. So we'll discuss that in the web application aspect as part of today's session. Anyhow, this particular mission is not going to allow SMB connections to. In the last class, we actually performed MS080, sorry, MS17010, which is Eternal Blue, right? So Eternal Blue will not work here. Not because the version is not vulnerable, the version is really vulnerable, but it will not allow you to connect to that SMB port. So let us run SMB map and see if I can list any shares that are present, 192.160.0.180. You can see it is not open. So if I go and perform the scan on 445, you can see that this port is blocked. Mostly you will see filtered because there will not be any response. In fact, the service, the firewall have a rule that is blocking this particular port. Inbound connections are blocked. The chances are outbound connections are already open. This is the default setting on all the Windows firewalls. So you can go on to the advanced setting, and we already discussed all these things in the last class. Outbound connections are allowed, but inbound connections, the rules that you write are going to match. So if I go on inbound, you can see there is a rule that is written to block all inbound connection. SMB service is enabled, right? But this one is blocked in the firewall. So let me disable this rule just to make the process simple. If this one is blocked and SSH is open, you can actually take advantage of doing some tunneling to gain access to the SMB service onto your machine. I will show you that once we are done with this pivoting concept. Okay, so that will be confusing right now, but once we are sure about all these aspects, then we can move on to that SSH local tunneling, remote tunneling, and dynamic tunneling, right? So in fact, we don't need this 445 open. We are happy with this SSH also. If you observe, RaceReva also have SSH. We can take advantage of that one, right? Of course, you need to find out the credentials. It is not that simple. That's a different story. But there is a possibility, right? Now that this port is open, I can take advantage of performing a quick brute force and figure out the password. So instead of going on Eternal Blue exploit again, let me take advantage of using SMB PSEXCC exploit that is part of Metasploit. I hope you all used this as part of your CEH training. Even though, let me take you through the same exact thing once again. So as we are already done with Eternal Blue exploit, instead of using that, let's start taking advantage of brute forcing the credentials of this particular service, SMB service. Use that credential to log into the target machine using SMB PSEXCC module, part of Metasploit. So for performing this particular activity, I already have word lists that are already built. So in the exams, you no need to worry because you will get the word list, right? That you can use for performing this activity. I'm going to copy those two word lists onto my desktop. Let's move on to the desktop and verify what are the contents of username.txt or cat the contents of every file that is present here. Right? So these are the contents that are part of both the files. So we have passwords, usernames, and so on. But in the real life scenario, you must enumerate, say, you must take advantage of exif tool. You must take advantage of enumerating usernames using the harvester, email addresses, right? So on that day, we actually did this using archive.org. We identified some credentials. We identified what are their designations on the previous role and so on, right? So I think we did that on Sinu ma'am's account, right? So we figured out that she was a part of some other area previously on Reva, right? So you can take inputs from that information gathering stage and build the word list, and the chances are the same exact things can work for you to log into the target service. Now let's do the brute forcing using Hydra. I hope you all are familiar with Hydra. So Hydra is going to take input of two different word lists or one single word list, right? Based on how the word list is designed. So I'm going to specify capital L option. You can always go on help manual to verify what are the things that this tool is going to do. Or simply run Hydra. As you can see, if you have a word list, you can use capital L option for login names, capital P to specify the password things. If both are in one single file in this pattern, you can specify C. Important options for this one is to specify the service that you are trying to hit, the server IP address or the domain name, and the port number. Here we are hitting SMB service. So we can take advantage of running Hydra with capital L, usernames.txt capital P, passwords.txt, right? So SMB : the IP address of the target device 180. So I'm not going to specify the port number because the service is actually running on the common port, which is 445. Please note that if it is running on a different port number, specifying that service detail is very, very, very important. Within a very short time, we got the credentials: username Vagrant, login Vagrant, administrator, and Vagrant. In fact, with this particular information, you can easily understand that Vagrant is the default user, right, who shared the password with the administrator. The chances are Vagrant can be the local administrator also. So administrator, even if the administrator account is enabled or disabled, I think in this case, administrator account is enabled. That is the reason why we are able to see administrator login credentials too as part of this brute force. And the important piece that we collected is Vagrant is administrator. So if you can log into the target device as Vagrant, it means you are administrator on the device. No privilege escalation required. So even if you use the eternal blue exploit, that is going to perform the exploitation and give you elevated state. So you no need to worry about performing privilege escalation there, right? So only if you are using some kind of client side service, or else if you have exploited some service that is running on a service account, right, then you will get then you will gain initial access as a user access. From there you need to perform privilege escalation. But now if you can log in using these credentials, we no need to perform any kind of privilege escalation. So let's jump onto MSF console. So as I'm starting MSF console for the first time, on boot, service, PostgreSQL, start. Once done, I'm gonna run MSF console in quiet mode. It will directly take me onto MSF6 prompt. And from there, I will search for SMB PSEXEC module. In fact, if you don't want to use this particular Metasploit framework, you can also take advantage of cloning Impacket, right? Impacket PSEXCC or Impacket GitHub will actually take you onto that GitHub page. So this particular utility will come with a lot of different tools as part of one single package. So you can set up an SMB server on your Kali Linux using this Impacket examples. You can actually connect to the target using that SMB PSEXCC module, right? So I highly recommend you to take advantage of cloning this, and it really helps you a lot in Active Directory exploitation. Right, so enumerating users, enumerating groups in Active Directory environment, there are so many scripts that you can use. Right, so that is one way to gain access if you are not interested in using Metasploit framework. So for now, let's go with search SMB PSEXCC. And there are so many modules that are part of it, but I am going to use this login one, exploit Windows SMB PSEXCC. So which is an authenticated user code execution. So this is not an exploit that will work without credentials. This is an exploit that works only if you have credentials. So please note that doing brute forcing or simply guessing password must be your initial step to start with this process. So I'm going to load this fourth module and clear my screen, verify options. We are going to set the concerned values for our host. SMB port is somewhere at 445, so we are not going to change it. We are not attacking it on a domain environment. If it is part of a domain, you can actually set up the domain credentials. So let me tell you the secret. In the exam, there is one mission that you can actually do brute force, figure out admin credentials and log in like this, right? This is secret. Don't tell anyone. Okay. Anyhow, I'm not giving you the entire scenario. It is highly impossible to cover everything. But the methodology that you are learning is the same exact thing. So we need to provide the username and password. So once you set up the username and password, you can get the reverse connection on this local device, right, on port 444. So set the required values. Our host 192.168.0.180. Set SMB user to administrator. Set SMB password to Vagrant. All right. So you can leave this L port value to 4444 or you can change it to anything else. Luckily, we don't have any kind of egress bursting applied on this Windows server. So,
sir, I think it should be Vagrant.
The password.
Vagrant. Thank you. Right. So you can actually change this L port value or you can leave it to 4444. This applies to this scenario, but in other scenarios, as discussed in the previous module, if 4444 don't work, it is better you switch to a different port. I always recommend going with a different port, right, instead of this 4444, because we can imagine that most of these servers will have the defense in place of egress bursting, writing proper rules to block all the outgoing connections. So I'm going to set this L port value to 3535. Exploit. If everything is successfully done, we must be able to get a meter, and that becomes our initial point. So imagine that we compromise the actual external facing server. So we got the access to Windows Server 2008 R2, right? Again, to build confidence, I'm going to show you. If you go online, showdown.io, I think I already showed you this multiple times. So trust me, my dear friends, there are servers that are really vulnerable. Again, whether you can exploit it or not is a question mark. That is the key thing for this exam, right? So don't always believe that, yes, it is outdated operating system, so I can exploit. Acha, no, there can be other defense that can block you. So even though it is vulnerable, you must think twice and see how it works. So there is a remote desktop protocol open, protocol service running, something from China, 3389. Hello, New Hydra. You can start guessing passwords or enumerate and figure out the credentials. Of course, you are not allowed to do it there, but just to build confidence, saying that yes, even in the real life scenario, you will face the similar kind of scenario, similar kind of missions. Because people always have this misconception, I'm just doing it in my lab, not in the real life. Hello, you will do it in real life only after you gain certain experience in the organization, right? So on the very first day, they will not give you a pen testing engagement directly. You will be part of a pen testing group, right? Where certain activities are your actual go-to things in that process, right? All right, we gained initial access to this device. So from Kali Linux, we gained access to the Metasploitable 3. And the interesting thing that you must do after gaining access to this mission is to figure out what are the network cards that are present. So as I mentioned, this particular practical is pivoting focused. So we are talking about only network cards, but you must enumerate other files, services, look at netstat, what services are running, what kind of connections that this machine made to other devices, what are the services that are locally running, right? So one of those things that you can check are MySQL port, right? So if the target machine is running MySQL service, then there is a chance that you can do some reverse port forward and gain access to MySQL port. So for example, if you check MySQL service, let's do this nmap scan on 192.168.0.180 to verify port 3306. You can see it is filtered, but you gained access. This is where you can do that reverse port forwarding using SSH, because SSH is open, right? So we'll do that at the end of this demonstration, but for now, let's continue with this Matterbitter. So please note down this point. After gaining access to Matterbitter, the first thing that you must check is to identify what are the interfaces that are enabled. Most of these external facing devices for sure will have some multiple interfaces enabled, because this particular server may be connected to a database server, external database server. It may be running its own local database, or else it may be connected to an external database server, or may be connected to some other internal network, may be connected to some other web server, who knows, right? So obviously those devices will be on a different network, just to avoid any kind of exploitation or direct access for the attacker. So that is the reason why verifying interfaces, you can see that there are two interfaces. One is on 0.180, other one is on 10.10.10.33. So 10.10.10.33 is a different network, and the identity of this Metasploitable 3 on that network is this 33. But we don't know what are the IP addresses of other devices that are part of this network. 10.10.10.0/24. How I know that it is /24? Because subnet mask is clearly telling that. All right, let's push this into the background. Now the post exploitation process starts. What is the very first thing that you must do? As you are already part of that local network, right? How I'm imagining that I'm already part of the local network? Because these devices are part of the local network, and I compromise this one single device. So after gaining access to this device, as administrator or else as a normal user, you are already part of their network. If you are part of their network, the best thing that you can do is network scan using ARP. There are a lot of modules that are already part of Metasploit that can help you in doing this. So let's go on to the post-exploitation modules and search for some post-exploitation module that can perform ARP scan. Please note that this is post-exploitation, means we must always have initial access. We must have gained access to some machine on that network. You need to have some kind of Meterpreter session or cell session to proceed with post-exploits. This is what we focused on the last session. I hope you all have those points in your running notes. So now I'm going to search for ARP scan. So please note the path of this. It is post Windows gather ARP scanner. This is going to work only on Windows platforms. Or you can also search for ping sweep. So there is a ping sweep module. And here you are seeing multi, means it works with any of the operating systems. So instead of choosing this one, I'm going to choose this one. Can anyone tell me why? What is the reason? Why I thought of choosing ARP scanner here?
If there are multiple operating systems.
Yes, of course. There are multiple operating systems, so I can take post multi-gather. So it works with Windows and also other operating systems. But why I'm picking only this one?
Sometimes
Because we
based
know
on
the MAC address.
Okay, MAC address. Anything else?
You want to narrow it down?
Narrowing it down. Okay. Anything else? There is one key point. What is the default setting on all the Windows machines for the firewall that is turned on? Why we use -PN in Nmap?
to bypass the firewall.
Bypass the firewall for what reason?
It rejects,
Ping.
right? It doesn't show.
Very good. Ping. It rejects the ping, right? So if I go with ping sweep, by default, it actually uses ICMP. And all these Windows machines obviously reject this ICMP. That is the reason why I'm going with ARP scan now. Got the point? Again, there are multiple modules that you can choose. How to pick which one works with it is all from the previous knowledge that we have. So always keep defenses in mind. Don't think that everything that is part of Metasploit can give us success, right? So it will give us success only if you use at the right time.
So anyway, we are in exploit, right? We are in post exploitation. So we are into that system. So how does the firewall matters?
See, I'm not talking about network-based firewall this time. I'm talking about host-based firewall. Say if this is a Windows machine, and if this one blocks ICMP, then I will not be able to communicate with this.
Okay.
Got it? So it is host-based firewall. Very good question. Please note down this point in your notes. Don't always think about network-based firewall. There can be host-based firewall also. So this is a host-based firewall that is blocking. So even my host machine MAC. So if you observe, the IP address of my host machine is 177, I think. Yes, 177. If I try to ping, so Kali and this machine both are on the same network. But if I try pinging 192.168.0.177, no way, it will not respond. So if it is blocking ICMP, then we will not be able to list it. So our intention here is to identify all the devices that are part of this network. Anyhow, in our simulation, we have only one device here, but in the lab environment or else in the real life environment, there can be multiple operating systems here. We don't know which one is blocking this ICMP. So the advantage of we being inside the network is to run ARP scan. If there is no module that is present as part of Metasploit, then you must write your own script. A simple shell script that can do this ARP scan and run that by dumping this onto that Windows machine. You know upload module, you know download module on Meterpreter. So we already have MetaBitter access on Windows machine. You can upload this particular script of your own and run that scan from that computer. So that is how you can manage. So if it is a Windows machine, you need to write a simple bash script. Anyhow, you no need to worry about programming everything from scratch. You can go and get it online, or everything is available online. You need to customize it according to your requirement to run that here. That's it. Anyhow, this is one key point that you must remember. Let's proceed. I'm going to load this ARP module, which is post. So if I do search this thing once again and use 0, I will be able to load this ARP module. Let us verify options for this. So as mentioned in the last class, post exploits will always have this option session, right? So this particular thing will actually take an input of R host, the session, and it will apply this R host on this MetaBitter session to identify how many devices are live. So set R host to 10.10.10.0/24. How I know that this is the one that is going to work? From this information that we already have. So we identified that this is the network configuration. So based on that, we are going to set this R host. So set the session value. Session is nothing but the session that you already have access to. So if I run sessions, you can see it is session 1. You need to set that session ID. Same as what we did for privilege escalation last session, right? So let's run exploit. Please note down this point, avoid or else don't think about these first 3 IP addresses. These 3 IP addresses are associated with our VirtualBox, right? So VirtualBox creates a NAT network adapter there, and that actually comes up with this thing. You'll not see these IP addresses in the real life scenario, right? So for now, exclude these IP addresses, and our main focus 33 and 34. I'm able to see those things now. Why I'm able to see all those things? Because I made this Metasploit run the scan through the first MetaBitter session. Means this scan is going through the Metasploitable 3 device. I hope you all got the point right. Is it clear? If I want to run the scan directly on those devices, there is no way. Are you all understanding, my dear friends? Oh, it is Nmap I want to do. So is it clear up until this point? There is no way that you will be able to see devices. I hope everything is clear up until this point. Can we proceed? If yes, please drop P in the chat. Great. All right. Now that we identified 2 different devices that are part of this network, post-exploitation module completed, and we can see one last device. This is for broadcasting. We are not going to consider that. This is the first one, which is nothing but our gateway. So 2 different devices that are live, 33 and 34. 33 we are not going to consider because 33 is nothing but our Windows machine only. So obviously our next target is 34. So from this particular external network, somehow we identified a device that is of 10.10.10.34 IP address. So now we must compromise this. Let's proceed. So this becomes your very first pivot. Using the Windows machine as a pivoting point, we are trying to compromise the internal device. But to communicate with that internal device, you need to set up a route. I mean, by default, all your communication towards this Windows machine will go on to this. But to communicate with the internal 10.10.10.34, you must route your traffic through this particular path. You must tell Metasploit this detail. Then only Metasploit will be able to identify and run any kind of activity on that 10.10.10.34 through this particular thing. So to do that, we must add a route using auto route script that is part of Metasploit Meterpreter. There are two ways in which you can add routes. Let me show you the first method in this first pivoting, right? And the second method in the second pivoting step. So the first method is, are you noting down the steps? The first thing is to gain access using SMB PAC XCC and then use post exploitation module to run network scan to identify the device. After identifying the device, I am going to add this particular IP or the entire network range, right, to the route using auto route script. So let's gain access to our Meterpreter. So this auto route script is part of Meterpreter itself. So this is the mission that we gained access to, and I want to add route through this particular device specific interface. So any Meterpreter script that you are going to run, you must prepend that with run command. Run auto route, right, with -s option to specify what is the subnet that you want to route. 10.10.10.0/24. So if the route is successfully added, you can actually verify that using -p. Got it? So any device that is part of this subnet can be accessed through session 1. We gave this understanding to Metasploit now. Now, if you directly run anything on 10.10.10.34, it will go through this particular route. Again, I'm going to put this in the background. One way to run this particular routing script is through Meterpreter, or you can add route from the Metasploit console itself. I'm switching between these two things. Please observe, right? I request or else I beg your kind attention. Please do concentrate. So this is the key point. If you know this, then you can play with any device that is there in the practice range. Trust me. So we can add route from Meterpreter using auto route, or you can add that route using route script, route command from MSF6 prompt. So we'll see how we can use route command to add that. Even though if you run this auto route on Meterpreter, you can observe that it is applied to your Metasploit now. Now that you have route added, we can simply perform port scan or version detection scan or whatever you want on the target device. So at first, we want to identify what are the TCP ports that are open on the target device, right? So we know the target device IP address by now, which is 10.10.10.34. We want to search for a module that can do this port scan. So search port scan. There are so many modules that are related to port scan. But what I want is TCP port scan. Again, there are so many things that you can see. You can pick whatever you want, but please do read the descriptions before you pick the right module, right? So based on how you are changing the keywords here, you will see those results. Anyhow, you can customize this particular thing also. I hope you all know that how to do it. So you can you can search based on type, right? Is it auxiliary or post module? You can actually say what is the additional keyword that you want to use, what is the platform that you want to choose, right? So that is all the mastery that you must do with Metasploit. Anyhow, a auxiliary module that you can use. So I'm gonna load this module. You can simply go with use 3 or specify use and the path. Now verifying options, this is going to give us RHOS and port numbers. Please note that this is not an attacking tool. I mean, it is not going to give you a reverse connection directly. This module is for performing port scan, right? So if you know what is this module going to do, then you can easily understand what are the options that we need to set. So I'm going to set the rhost value to our actual target 10.10.10.34. And just to simplify the process, I'm going to set the ports from 20 to 80. As we already know that the Metasploitable 3 is vulnerable, right? I'm simply focusing on 20 to 30 ports. But in the real life scenario, we don't know. There you need to run scan on all common 1000 ports, right? Or else range of ports. So let's run the scan. And we are lucky enough, there is SSH and there is port 21 also. Yet another misconfiguration that I must demonstrate here is reuse of passwords. So same like how a regular user will have the habit of reusing the passwords. Even in the organization, administrators actually reuse passwords a lot of times. If we are lucky enough, we can take advantage of trying those vagrant or admin vagrant here also. If they work, you are in to that device also. Got it? Or else you can take advantage of performing something called as version detection scan using Windows machine as a proxy. So it can be a little bit complex at this point. Let's go with regular process now. And once this is done, I will show you that additional stuff. So as you can see, it can take a little bit more time than our actual Nmap. In fact, you can also use your Nmap here, right? But the Nmap scan that you are going to do from the other terminal will not work. Only this one will work because only Metasploit know that I must tunnel the traffic through this interface to reach this IP address. Anyhow, we got what we want. So port 22 and 21. All right. In fact, this particular version of FTP that is running on the target machine is vulnerable. So I'm cutting down all the complexity here. So you can search for version detection scan and then perform version detection scan on port 21 and see what is the software running there. Say if I go with pn n onto 10.10.10.34, performing a version detection scan. You can use Nmap within this particular Metasploit itself. Right, you can see that the port is filtered. Again, Metasploitable 3 is also a Windows, I mean Linux machine is also firewalled. Okay, so both these devices are actually firewalled. So you are seeing port 21 is also filtered. The chances are whether the port is open or closed, we don't know. But the Nmap port scan confirmed that the port is open. And the version of this particular service is actually vulnerable and running Pro FTPD 1.3.5. Yet another most popular vulnerable exploit that is commonly used on FTP ports. So I'm going to load that particular module and run the attack, but I'm abstracting this just for the sake of simplicity of pivoting aspect. So this demonstration is completely focused on pivoting. So I'm taking a lot of imaginations. I hope you can easily understand, right? So let's go with the exploit now. Is it clear up until this point? We are done with our very first pivot and we identified ports that are open on the target device. Now it is time for exploitation. Let's exploit the target service, which is running on port 21. As I already mentioned that the target port 21 is actually running Pro FTPD 1.3.5 and there is a mod copy exploit which is a command execution vulnerability, right? That can give us a reverse connection from the target. So without a further ado, let's load this module. and verify options. Now it is time to set our host value as our target's IP address. Please note that this is Metasploitable 3 IP, not your actual server IP. In fact, this vulnerability is existing on the target FTP service, which allows unauthenticated users to upload files onto the web server. After doing a little bit of enumeration on that server, you will identify that the web server is actually running on var www HTML port, HTML directory, right? So these are all imaginations for now. I will demonstrate this in web application module, right? So in the second half today, so don't worry. So I'm going to set the site path var www HTML. And same as what we did for searching exploits, you can actually search for exploits or sorry, payloads. So show payloads. These are all payloads that are present. You can pick whatever payload that you are interested in based on your choice. So I always love reverse payloads. So instead of going with generic, this time let's take Perl, because Perl is also something that is quite common on all different Linux machines. So payload. Set payload 5. All right. So if I verify options, you can see everything is properly configured except for the lhost value. Set lhost value to ETH0, which is nothing but Kali Linux IP address. Please note that lhost is nothing but our attacker Kali Linux IP only. We are exploiting this device. We are able to reach this device through Windows machine, but the reverse connection should be on Kali Linux. Then only we will be able to communicate with that and do some other stuff with that machine, right? So please note that the lhost value will be this particular Kali Linux IP address only. And this time, let me set the lport value to 3636. And run exploit and see if we can get success. Exploit failed. We are not able to get the success, right? But again, we got the shell. This is something that I want to demonstrate. That is the reason why, even without explaining you what this Pro FTPD is, I actually picked it. So if I go on sessions, you can actually see there is session. Software is software. It will work at times. It may fail at times. There can be n number of reasons. And here it confirmed that the exploit is successful, exploit failure, but still we have a command shell from the target device. So in fact, what this thing does is there is a misconfiguration in this FTP version, which allows an unauthenticated user to upload some malicious PHP code onto the target web server and take shell out of that particular service. In fact, we'll see how we can manually do all this job in the web application module. Anyhow, we have the shell from the Metasploitable 3 device. Are you understanding? Shell is good, but MetaBitter is too good, right? So how you can get MetaBitter? Can anyone tell me? How can you get MetaBitter from that Metasploitable 3 device? We got basic shell, that's it. There is no MetaBitter payload as part of this. So there is no way that you can choose MetaBitter for this exploit. So how we can get MetaBitter? Can anyone tell me how we can get MetaBitter?
A privilege escalation.
Okay, privilege escalation, you will be becoming root. But what we want is a MetaBitter connection from that Windows Linux machine. What I want is MetaBitter. You know MSF Venom? We actually learned in the last class.
We need to create a payload and then.
Very good. Very good. You are correct. We must upload that there. Try to execute that on the target machine using this shell and get the reverse connection. So the same exact process that we discussed in the last class, like MSF Venom payload, uploaded there on the target, executed that, and then we got connection. But there it is a client side attack we imagined that there is someone who is sitting in front of that computer, they executed it. But here you don't need to worry. Why? Because we already have the command shell there, right? So you can execute it on the target. So you can upload it, you can execute it, start a multi-handler as I mentioned in the last class and get the reverse connection. But interestingly, you no need to do all that process. There is an option that is part of sessions command, which is -u, specify the ID within a very short time. It will do all the things that I mentioned and will give you a meter. Very simple. From a normal shell, now you have a meter. You know the underlying concept, but Metasploit is going to automate it. That's it. This is why we love Metasploit. This is why we love meter. Got it? So we successfully gained access to meter also. So if I run this info, you can see this is Ubuntu 14.4. You know how to search for the kernel exploits and take advantage of exploiting this Linux machine and elevate your privileges. If you check your user ID, you are just www data because you exploited the web service and gained access through FTP. Is everything clear up until this point? Hello. Now we successfully managed to complete our single pivot and gained access to Metasploitable 3. Can we quickly move on to the last one and perform the double pivot? So we'll take break after this double pivot, okay? Because I don't want to break this particular flow. So hardly 10 to 15 minutes, okay?
So just a doubt. Can you show how did you find that Pro FTP version?
Yes, we'll talk about that in the web application aspect, okay?
Okay.
So I'll show you the actual vulnerability in web application aspect. So we have a lot of practicals that we follow in the same exact pattern.
Okay. Is it just the version scan will give us?
Yes. So simple nmap scan will tell you that this is Pro FTPD 1.3.5, same exploit DB, search exploit, use that exploit, and you will be able to gain access.
Okay.
So if I run all those version detection scans and everything here, it can be confusing. That is the reason why I abstracted that as part of this. Now, can we move on to the last step? Is everything clear up until this point? If you are excited about the last step, please drop E in the chat. This is single pivoting. Single pivot. Very simple. Compromising one machine and trying to look for ways to exploit the other device which is connected to this particular computer over a different interface. That's it. Now our next goal is to gain access to HSV box, which is on a different network to which only Metasploitable 3 can communicate. Again, ifconfig, repeat the same exact process once again. You can identify that there is yet another interface apart from this 10.10.10.34. If you find this, what is the next step? Put this in the background, right? So if I check sessions, there are 3 sessions. First one is on to Windows machine, through which you got access to this Linux machine, and you converted or upgraded this shell to meter. You can use any of these things now. Now it is time to add a route to the next device. But to add route to the next device, you need to identify the IP address. Anyhow, that is not important. Why? We don't need to worry about that specific IP. We can add the entire subnet using the command that we actually used before. So here at this point, I simply executed run. Okay, I cleared the screen. Sorry. So we executed run and we actually specified that path and then we got the access, right? So you can simply avoid running network scan, add that route and then do all different things that you want to do, right? Or you can take advantage of doing this scan using the ping sweep thing, right? As we used that ARP scan before, let us use multi-ping sweep now. So here the ARP scan will not work. Why? Because Why? Because the post exploit, sorry, not sessions, search. Why? Because this is the ping ARP scan one is Windows related. That will not work here on the Linux machine. So that is the reason why only the ping sweep module works here. Apart from this, there are tons of other modules. You know how to go and explore and get module information, use the concerned module. Now we have this ping sweep ready. Again, we know that it is going to ask for the R host value 10.20.20.0/24 this time. And I'm going to set session. Can anyone tell me what is the session detail that I must mention here? What must be the session ID?
Metapreter.
Which Metapreter session?
Metasploit.
1, 2 or 3?
3.
Very good. 3. Right? Exploit or run. Avoid the first 3 things. And we have 16 found. This is the one that we are looking for. I think my Windows dead. Yeah, my Windows mission dead. Let's see if we can proceed or not. So this session is not going to work anymore. Anyhow, we have access to this Metasploitable 3 now. I don't think we will be able to gain access to that one until and unless we have Windows mission up and running. But anyhow, you got the idea up until this point, right? So you got access to the IP address. Now the procedure repeats. Again, the same exact step. You can take advantage of adding the route, gaining access to the Metapreter. So let's see if this Metapreter is still active or not. Yes, it is there. So the third one is still there. You can run auto route, right? This time it is 10.20.20.0/24. You need to add a S to specify that you are going to add this route. This is one way. The other way I was talking about is you can put this in background and use route command here to add that route. So route add towards which mission? So 10.20.20.16, right? 255.255.255.0 is the subnet mask, and the Metapreter session ID is 3. Are you observing that? The session is not existing. Why so? Now it worked. All right, no problem. So if I run route command, you can actually see now we have route added. Can do it from Metapreter using the previous command, or you can do it this way. Is it clear now? I hope you all got the point. So the same exact process that we did for the first one, we repeated it here. There is nothing different. So can we move on to the last step? Accessing services on the HS VBox. If yes, drop L in the chat. So now that we have access to this VBox through Metasploitable 3, session 3, you can run all the scans on the target device through this particular session, or the actual thing that you have already added. I mean, the route that you have added will help you choosing some module that is part of Metasploit. We actually used the port scan module before, right? So search for TCP scan or else port scan, which is of TCP, and then pick that one and run the TCP scan there, right? But this is limited. Am I right? This is limited. So my Windows was dead. That is the reason why Metapreter session 1 dead. I don't think we will be able to see these two things also further, but let me quickly complete this. If we are able to use this module that are part of Metasploit framework, then it's okay, fine. But running Nmap scan is always good. Yes or no? Yes or no? Running Nmap scan is always interesting. We can easily go and figure out what is the exact version. You can customize it according to your requirement and so on. So at this point, we can take advantage of setting up a SOX proxy. Means we'll actually use this particular mission as a proxy server and perform all the scans on the target device through this particular device. Okay. So to do that, we need to use proxy chains. May I know how many of you are familiar with proxy chains before? If you're already familiar with proxy chains, please drop yes in the chat. If you are not familiar, please drop N in the chat. Okay, I think all of the attendees are not familiar. Then I think I must go on to the explanation part for proxy chains before we proceed with this step. All right, then. It's good. We'll take a short break. We'll take a short break of 15 minutes and we'll see you all again. Right. In the meanwhile, I will again set up my windows and then we'll go with the demonstration. Okay. All right. Let's break for 15 minutes and we'll see you all after break. फिर मिलेंगे ब्रेक के बाद. All right. I hope all of you are here. If yes, please drop back in the chat so that we can continue. Hello, are you all there? Hello, are you all there? Can we continue? If yes, please drop back in the chat. Great. All right. Very good. So unfortunately, my Windows was down. That is the reason why all the things that we did up until that point are reverted. So let's repeat the process once again so that it can be a revision part for all of you. So please go through your notes. I will be repeating the same exact steps that I did so far, and we'll stop again at the third step after double pivot. Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone is here. Are you all here? If you are responding. All right, then let's continue. So I'm going to repeat the same exact steps that I did before, right? From by exploiting this Windows machine and gaining access to this, making it a meter, and then we'll stop at this HSV box. So the first thing that I did is to search for the SMB PSEXEC, which we use to provide the credentials and log into the target Windows Metasploitable 3 device. So I'm going to verify the options. Set the R host value. R is nothing but 192.160.0.180. So please look into your running notes. We are just repeating the steps that we already did. SMB user, administrator, and SMB password is Vagrant. And we changed the L port value to something like 3535. Exploit will complete the job of giving us the very first meter, gaining access to the Windows machine. We simply, just as a proof of concept, you can see that this is a Windows machine. Now we are going to put this in the background and take advantage of adding the route towards the target device. So you can do that right from the meter also. I'm avoiding all the steps that we already did before, like port scan and all. So let's run the module auto route and specify 10.10.10.0/24. So this is one technique, and the other technique is to add route using route command on Metasploit console itself, right? So anything works. I just want to cover multiple alternates. So the previous one, which is route, add route, works only on MSF console. And this one works on meter. Okay, please keep the difference. And I'm going to put this in the background and search for Pro FTPD 1.3.5. Among all these things, we got the actual exploit, verifying options. We configured a site path. So right now I'm doing it with this particular vulnerability. You can actually perform the same exact task on any other vulnerability that you identify, or else you can simply go and take SSH module and log into the target using SSH module. Even that thing also works, right? So again, enumeration process, exploit process remains same as what we did before in the previous session. So set payload to command Unix reverse Perl. You can set whatever payload that you wish. So once we are done setting up all the options, let's show options. Set lhost value to ETH0, or you can set the IP address. It is your choice. So L port is 3636 this time. Let's change this just to keep the difference. Exploit our host not configured. Set our host to 10.10.10.32 or 31. 34. So if everything is successfully done, we must be able to gain access to a shell, and we can simply upgrade that shell. We got that shell this time. Previously it failed and then we got the shell, right? But this time we immediately got the shell. So ID, let's wait for this shell. Only if it is completely established, we will be able to execute all the commands. Waiting for it to work. I hope this is not confusing you. We are doing the same exact step we actually performed in the previous step. So let's see sessions. Very good. We already have the shell. So sessions -u2. This must upgrade our shell to meterpreter, and we'll have one more meterpreter. And using that meterpreter, we can actually pivot to the other device. So now we have 3 sessions. And the third one is the meterpreter towards the Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu device. Now we are going to take advantage of this meterpreter to pivot to HSV box. This is where we stopped, right? So I hope everything is clear up until this point. So can we proceed? If yes, please drop P in the chat. I just want to cross check that everyone is here. So that no one is going to miss the actual part, as it is completely new for all of you. Right. So running these modules from Metasploit is not that convenient, right? So you have seen how to run port scan, but for version detection scan, we must search for the specific module and then run that there. Instead of performing it in that fashion, we can take advantage of adding this one, or else this particular Metasploitable 3 device as a proxy, or else the connection that we already have, which is there with the route towards Metasploitable 3 and also Metasploitable 3 Linux, can be utilized as a proxy server to communicate with this Linux machine. It is like the proxy that you use in your organization, or the proxy that you are actually taking advantage of over internet to browse through the websites that are blocked in your organization. I hope you all are thorough with the proxy concept from the HCEH module. The same exact thing here. But we are setting up our own proxy on this Metasploit, and we are going to use that proxy to communicate with this target device. To do this job, we are going to use a tool that is pre-built on both Kali and Parrot, which is proxy chains. To take advantage of this proxy setting, there is a proxy module available in Metasploit. So if I run route command, I think we must add route to the next one also. So let us add route add. So 10.20.20.16 255.255.255.0 onto the third module. I don't know why the first time it is not working, the second time it works. All right, so if I see there is a route already added. Now we are going to search for, please take down, SOX proxy. SOX proxy. Search for SOX proxy and load the SOX proxy server module. So let's run U0 and verify options. You can see the SOX proxy server actually starts listening on 1080 port number, and it is SOX version 5. So you can take advantage of sending all your traffic towards the internal devices through this SOX, this particular port number that SOX listens on. The interesting part is when you start this SOX proxy server on Metasploit now, it will be applied for these two routes that you actually added. It means if you set up the SOX proxy on this Metasploit, you can directly communicate with this Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu or the HSV box by simply using proxy chains utility and take advantage of running all different commands that you want to write from your terminal. So to set up this SOX proxy, the first thing that you must do, take down, step 1 is to start this SOX proxy module. Make a note of the port number, which is 1080. Simply execute exploit-j, which is going to set this particular SOX proxy in the background. This is step 1 of this process. After doing this, go on to your Kali Linux and open your favorite, use your favorite text editor and open the file that is located under etc named as proxychains.conf. Proxychains.conf. So I'm going to do sudo nano and open etc proxychains.conf. On proxy chains utility, you can actually take advantage of SOX 4 or SOX 5 version to proxy your traffic using any of these 3 modes. The first mode is dynamic chain, second mode is strict chain, third one is round robin, right? And fourth one is random chain. We'll talk about these modes. Let's jump onto the last lines of this configuration file. At the end of this configuration file, you will see a line telling add proxies here. For example, I hope in CEH you actually did some kind of proxying for accessing sensitive hidden websites and so on, right? You can take all those proxy IP addresses and add those proxy IP addresses here, so that your traffic, right, your web-related traffic or system-related traffic will go through that proxied IP addresses towards the target. Same like your Tor network, right? So we'll make use of a Tor browser to send all our traffic through the Tor network, right? You can actually do that with proxy chains by simply specifying 9050 port number and starting the Tor service. I will show you that once we are done with this so that you can easily get hold of how to use proxy chains. But for now, what I mentioned at the end of this configuration file is SOX 5 because we actually set up a SOX 5 proxy on our Metasploit framework on port number 1080 with loopback IP address. All right. Now, As SOX server is actually running on Metasploit console, all the routes that are part of it are going to are of your benefit. You can send your traffic to any of those devices through this SOX server, which can actually be done using proxy chains. So proxy chains will take your traffic which is on this mission, which is local IP address. That is the reason why we have local IP. So proxy chains will take everything that is that you are doing on this local mission through this 1080 and send it to the proxy server that you are running here, right? And through this, you can communicate with any other computer on the network. All right. So SOX 5 line should be enabled by simply removing the comment symbol in front of it. So if you are using proxy chains for the first time, you will not see the SOX 5 line. Then simply write down this particular entry, SOX 5 with loopback IP address and 1080. It is not compulsory that you must leave it to 1080. You can set whatever port that you want to, but make sure that you set the same exact port on this server also. Now, coming towards the settings. There are different modes that you can operate this proxy chains on. If you are choosing this random chain, let us imagine that you added multiple proxy IP addresses and port numbers in the proxy chains configuration file. If you enable random chaining, this random chaining will pick IPs from the list of IPs that you have mentioned randomly. If the IP that you have picked is properly working, then you will have this advantage of proxying. If the IP that you have picked is not working, then you will not be able to proxy through the network. Next one is round robin chain. It means all the IPs that you have added at the end. In fact, we didn't added any additional IP addresses or port numbers. You can simply go on to any of this proxy website. So you can go and get some proxy list from SAM Air proxy list. If you search for SAM Air proxy list, you can see free proxies. You can pick all these IP addresses, port numbers, and add them onto your SOX proxy, right? So anyhow, here we are not worried about some public servers for proxying. We are using our own device. So round robin is all about rotating the actual list of proxies that you already have. Strict chain will go with the same exact order that you add. For example, if you pick 4 or 5 from this, right? So it will go with the first one. If this particular proxy is working, then it will pick that and proxy the traffic there. If the first one is not working, then your proxying will be stopped. So no traffic on your network or your mission will go through the proxy server. And the first one, which is dynamic chaining, is always convenient because it will actually take advantage of looking for the proxy list that you are provided in the proxy chains at the end. It will pick the first one. If it is not working, if the server is down, it will go and pick the second one. If the second one is also down, it will go and pick the third one. It will look for something that is reliable and working. Then it will use that particular thing for proxy. Are you understanding? So we are going to set dynamic chaining for this purpose. By default, this dynamic chaining will be disabled. So please remove comment in front of it to activate it. And by default, you will see strict chain is enabled. So add comment in front of strict chain to disable this strict chain. Two things that you must do as part of step 2 of this process: enable dynamic chaining and add SOX proxy line, SOX proxy 5, right, along with the loopback IP address and the port number that you wish to run this proxying on. With that thing said, let's simply cross-check the details. So I'm going to tail the content and print 4 lines, last 4 lines of etc proxy chains.conf. You can see we have 1080. Now it is time to take advantage of accessing any server on this network by simply prepending this with prepending the command with proxy chains. If I try to do nmap scan on 10.20.20.16, right, skipping the ping scan and name the resolution, I will not be able to communicate with that device. There is no way. Just to simplify this process, let me specify only one port, port 80. You will see that port is filtered because there is no communication coming back from that device. But if I try to prepend this with proxy chains, let's see what happens. It will take you through that particular tunnel 1080 and identify whether the port is open or not. Yes, that port is open. Yet another example. If I try to open my browser and access, 10.20.20.16, right? Sorry, this is a cached page. Let's remove cache, clear history. Now, 10.20.20.16, no way, you cannot access. But if I start this proxy chain, Firefox in connection with proxy chains, and try to visit http://10.20.20.16, I will be able to do so and access the web page. Hello, are you observing? Not only this, whatever device that you have actually tunneled through, I mean, if you already added route towards Metasploitable 3, why can't we add the IP address of Metasploitable 3 and check 10.10.10.34? If everything is successfully done, we must be able to access that particular port. Is it 34 or something else? Or else let's run nmap scan and check. Is 10.10.10.34 port 80 open? Let's see what it responds. So it is closed. I don't know why it is closed. Let's take advantage of running the scan on port 21, version detection, and see. Okay. I actually started this proxy server here, right? And this session was dead. So the first Matterpreter session was dead. That is the reason why it is not working. I don't know why my Windows machine is dying constantly. That is the reason why it is not working. But I hope you all got the idea. Is it clear, my dear friends? So proxy chains will help you in accessing that hidden service that you are not commonly or else generally able to access. In fact, this is the same exact technique that we actually use while performing SSH dynamic tunneling. Imagine that you have access to one of these servers in the organization, which is exposed to the internet, right? By simply making SSH connection to any of these services, you can access whatever internal device that you want to. Let me show you that. Let's close all this Metasploit thing. And I hope you all got the idea on how to use Metasploit. But you don't need to use Metasploit. Let me show you how to do it without Metasploit. So I'm going to kill the tunnel. I already killed the tunnel. So I can check netstat to see if there is any tunnel that is established. Netstat -antp grep for anything that is associated with 1080. So all are done, dead, right? So time wait, it is going to close all these things in a short while. There is no established connection. Before going on to that SSH tunneling, right, and simplify the job that we actually learned so far, we can do a simple demonstration on Tor service first. Okay. I hope you all know Tor browser. Yes or no? You all know Tor browser?
Yeah, anonymous browsing.
Yep. So for Tor browser, only browser level communication will go through the Tor thing. Yes or no? Anything apart from the Tor browser, if you are running some Nmap scan or something else, then it will not tunnel through the Tor network, right? So the actual demonstration is to go and check the Tor browser and see if you can access .onion browsers, or .onion websites. I hope you can easily access it, right? But if you go and try to access that through your normal browser, you will not be able to do it because Tor browser is capable of doing all the decryption for you. But what if other things that you want to hide? If I directly perform Nmap scan on race Reva, right? This is going to make a log of my IP address, my public IP address. What I can do, I can set up a SOX proxy through this Tor network so that every scan that I do will actually go through that particular SOX proxy only. Anyhow, before proceeding on to this one, I just want to confirm, is the previous practical clear? I hope you all got the idea on how I actually access the HSV box. If it is clear, please drop C in the chat so that I can again demonstrate how to use proxy chains, right? But this time using Tor browser. Then I think this one will be strengthened. Very good. I hope this is not confusing. Anyhow, if you do it on your own, then you can easily understand and remember the process. Please make sure that you take advantage of the cheat that you have prepared during the session. So repeat it. At any point of time, if you have doubts, you can email me anytime. All right. So let's go with this simple demonstration to understand proxy chains in detail. As you are not aware of proxy chains before, I think this one can simply help you. So if I go on pinging, let's ping race Reva. Are you able to ping race Reva or not? Or else let's take Google. Google can be a good example at this point. So I'm going to ping Google for 3 times, google.com. We are able to ping. And Google have this extremely bad habit of understanding where I am, but that is really good in most of the scenarios because Google will help me on connecting to the server that is nearby so that my experience or browsing internet, my browsing experience will be good. But I don't want Google to identify my actual public IP address. So if I do anything from my normal browser or anything from my terminal, right? Google is smart enough to identify my IP address. So if I ask Google, what is my IP? It is going to tell me that this is my IP address. So the server, Google server that is near to this particular IP is this one. All right. Now I'm going to start the Tor service on my computer. Please note that this is not Tor browser. Tor service will not come pre-built with your Parrot or Kali. So you must install Tor service on your computer, right? So how to do it? Sudo apt install Tor. After installing Tor, you can start Tor service on your computer using sudo service Tor start. If Tor service is properly started, you can check the status. Right? You can see that it is active. Now if I run netstat command -antp, sorry, you can see Tor service started on the loopback IP address for 9050 port, right? It started listening. Now that the Tor service is running, you can send anything that you are doing on this computer through this Tor network. How? The same proxy chains. So I'm going to edit that config file once again, because we must point it to 9050 this time. I'm leaving it to dynamic chaining because Tor network will have a lot of servers there. So you can leave it to dynamic chaining so that it will pick the right one that you want to use. So SOX 5 9050. For this, you can actually enable both the rules. There is no restriction. So it can pick SOX 4 or SOX 5. So I'm going to save this. Please note the difference between this one and the previous one that I did. In the previous one, we actually configured our own SOX server on that Metasploit. Metasploit related access that we have. And that is where we decided to use SOX 5. So SOX 5 is the one that we configured in the proxy chains also. Now that we edited the proxy chains config file, let's start running the same ping command, but this time with proxy chains and see if we can find any difference. Hello? Is there any difference? Not able to see any difference. I think we have Tor service running. Let's try. Proxy chains, Firefox, DNS, leaktest.com. Now, this is not my actual IP address. Hello? Now, if I ask Google, what is my IP? Obviously, Google will detect that it is coming through the tunnel, Tor network. That is the reason why it will put CAPTCHA. So let's go on what is myipaddress.com. Are you seeing that the traffic is going through the tunnel? In the background, you can see everything is going through this tunnel. This is one single technique that anyone can use within the organization. See, this is the IP address, and you can see that the traffic is going through the tunnel. Hello? Are you understanding? Now you can perform whatever scan that you want, but this time the traffic will go through the tunnel only. Right? So this time the tunnel is the Tor network for you. So your traffic is directly going through the Tor network. Not sure why it is showing the same IP address, but this time the Google must change its path, must show something that is near to the Tor exit node that we picked. Anyhow, there can be a number of things that are happening in the background, but I hope with this demonstration you got the clear idea on how you can tunnel your traffic through a specific network. This is the same exact thing that I applied in the previous demonstration for tunneling my traffic through that particular Metasploitable 3 device onto HSV box. Is that clear now? Can I repeat this once again, giving one more scenario? Because I want you all to understand this clearly, because this is the key, even in this CPENT exam. There is a practical for this one in iLabs, but it is not directly associated. No practical will actually explain you in detail like this. on where you can use it. That is the reason why I related that with a scenario so that you can easily understand. Is this thing clear? So can I demonstrate it once again with one more example? If yes, please drop 1 in the chat. To reduce the complexity, let us take Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu and HSV box this time. Right? So I'm going to change the IP of this one to the bridged network. Single pivot. Hello, this is single pivot. I think I must reboot this, then only we'll get that, or else let me try bringing around this interface and then putting this back again. Sudo ifconfig down.
If down.
ETH 0 down. Up. At times it will not work. Let's see. Give it a few seconds. No way. We must do reboot this. Quick fix. So I'm completely putting this Metasploitable 3 windows away, and we have these two things. Again, the same exact setup. You cannot directly communicate with this one. Only if you have access to this. Using tunneling, you can see this. If not, you cannot. So let me demonstrate 2 core SSH tunneling concepts here. So what we performed before is more on to pivoting, where we use this tunneling concepts to perform that pivoting. I hope you all are thorough with double pivoting now, right? So more tunnels more devices that you find, more interfaces that these devices have, you must proceed with the same exact process multiple times. That's it. There is no complexity there. But people feel it complex because the first thing that they do, they don't know what they are doing. So I beg you, please understand what you are performing. Then only proceed doing all the practicals. Blindly looking into the material and then executing the same will not give you the skill, right? So that is the reason why I want to take you away from that material knowledge, right? A step ahead than the material knowledge. That is why we are focusing more onto practical aspects. In fact, CPENT is more on practical than the theory part. There is tons of theory that is available in the material. I think you all have access to the material, and you went through the content there. So especially if you are going with CPENT exam, then focus on the practical aspects. Of course, reading through the material is also good. So material gives you the actual concept. Because of multiple interfaces, this one is going to take time on loading. Very good. So if I run Vagrant, we have 208 as IP address. All right. So somehow you figured out the SSH credentials of this particular device, right? So in the same exact fashion, you can connect to that device using SSH and then do this tunneling there. Let us see whether this one is still running or not. I think I didn't stop that Tor service. We are still running this Tor service. I want to kill this Tor service so that you can go on doing this, or else you can take this as an example. So if your organization is blocking certain website, or else I don't know whether I can say this or not. Is Shinu ma'am here? If she is here, if she is hearing, I'm extremely sorry. If there is something that is blocked in your organization, what you can do? Hello? Set up proxy chains, install Tor service, and then try to access that by starting the browser through proxy chains. Hello? Are you understanding, my dear friends? So if I go on this website, which is Pandora.com, you can see this one is blocked in India. Let's see if we can access the same exact website, Pandora.com, through our Tor network or not. See, if the Tor nodes are also not allowed, then you will not be able to access. Firefox, especially if Facebook is blocked or WhatsApp is blocked, then you can access them through this proxying technique. If it allows nodes from the Tor network, then we must be able to see that Pandora.com actual website with login page. Oh, seems it's working. Right? Until and unless your network administrator blocks all the Tor related communication, this is going to work. Hello? It can take some time. You must be very patient because this time the traffic is going through the tunnel towards the target device. And if someone try to sniff the network traffic, what they will see? They will see that something is going towards that 9050 port, right? So that is all because you allowed them to communicate with anyone over internet or network through that particular port. I think someone who is associated with network administration will actually block that port now. Please don't do that. Hello. Are you understanding? Is it clear? No response. I think people are feeling bored.
Do we always need this Kali for?
No need. You can install this proxy chains on any Linux machine.
Process would be the same.
Same exact thing. apt install proxy chains, apt install Tor service. Okay. And now talking from employees perspective, do remember your administrator will restrict you from installing anything, right? Why? This is the reason. If they allow you to do this, you will install all these tools and then you will start performing all these activities. For your kind information, if you don't have access or if you have a restriction in your environment installing some software, then this one will not work. What is the other alternate for this? You want me to tell that alternate? Or else you can think about it. Anyhow, I don't want to spoil the entire process. Let's defenders defend, and I don't want to disturb them. Now let's look at this example. I have this Metasploitable 3 and somehow you figured out the credentials of this Metasploitable 3. And this one is running on the external internet. And if I go there on to 192.168.0.208, you can see this is the application that we can access. Drupal is there, Drupal 7, the same exact exploit that we did before. You can exploit that and gain access. There is a chat application. These are all common services that are generally exposed to the internet. So these are the two PHP payloads that are uploaded by our previous exploit. There is PHP myadmin. You can actually access this PHP myadmin and do the attack, right? So gain initial access based on whatever vulnerability that you identify. For now, let me simply show you with SSH connection. So if I try to make SSH connection to the target device, because we already have credentials, if you don't have credentials, you must do this brute forcing to figure out the credentials. You can see the normal SSH thing is properly working. So I'm able to make a SSH connection towards the target device. As there is SSH service running on the target, what I'm going to do is to perform SSH tunneling, I'm going to start applying the dynamic port forwarding or dynamic SSH tunneling, right? There are three common ways, the common things that you will actually identify. The one that we did before is nothing but the dynamic chaining, right? So dynamic SSH port forwarding. So we'll make a connection towards this device, set up the proxy, and then access anything that is inside that network using that proxy. So let's perform this. To do this, you are using SSH client software, right? With -D option. D indicates dynamic chaining. This is where you need to specify what is the port that you want to use for tunneling this traffic. As 9050 is the one that is already added in my proxy chains configuration file. Just to avoid the complexity for this particular utility, you can do comment one of the lines, etc proxy chains.conf. You can actually comment one of these lines. So you can use SOCKS 4 or SOCKS 5. Any one is okay, simple. But in case of Tor network that you are applying this for, I highly recommend you to set up both the things, because few servers out there in that network may use SOCKS 4. So in that case, you can take advantage of those devices too. So let me stop the Tor service first. Service Tor stop. If the Tor service is running in the background, we'll have a clash. So let's see if we successfully manage to stop it or not. netstat-antp grep 49050. There is nothing, right? So nothing associated with 9050. Successful. Now let's set up this dynamic tunneling. So -D, please note down the command. -D. You can actually specify the port number directly, or you can use 127.0.0.1 loopback IP address and the port number. On this local device, set up dynamic tunneling on port 9050. I can also add -N option. This will avoid us from getting into the normal SSH shell. And now specify the credentials, SSH credentials of the target device 208. So now the tunnel is established. You will not see the SSH prompt because we actually added N option not to give us the shell towards this device. Now if I split this terminal, and run netstat-antp and grep for 9050, you can see the tunnel is actually established, right? Using this one, you can communicate with the target now, which is on 10.20.20.16. So which you are not able to communicate by simply performing normal nmap scan, but prepending this with proxy chains, you will be able to do so. So let's see the difference. 20.20.20, sorry, 16. To keep it simple, I'm targeting only port 80. Let's do it on port 21 also. Mostly it will say filtered because it will not receive any response. Proxy chains. Open. Got it? This is the same exact thing that I applied in double pivoting concept, right? One key point that you must note in your running notes. Let me switch to the representation. So after gaining access to this Windows machine, if you set up a proxy here, only the devices that are part of this network will be able to, you will be able to see. Hello? Are you understanding? Because you have the interface here through which you can actually see all these devices, but you will not be able to see this one. That is the reason why I demonstrated one technique here and the other technique here. So if you want, you can also apply proxy chains here to access this Metasploitable 3 and perform the scans here. After completing that, you can compromise this device using the modules that are part of Metasploit and then try to access this from this Metasploitable 3. Is it clear, my dear friends? Got it? I hope we are successful in this pivoting and double pivoting, understanding pivoting and double pivoting. So not only performing Nmap scans, you can do whatever you want. Say, I want to perform Nmap scan on port 21, which is aggressive scan to see if there is anonymous FTP allowed. If anonymous FTP is allowed, I can actually take advantage of connecting to the target FTP port. Please note that this is 10.20.20.16, right? You can see this is the FTP one. In the last class, this is the port that we actually connected and I grabbed this bugbeak image. But now direct FTP connection will not work. But if I go with proxy chains, FTP 10.20.20.16, FTP username, FTP password, we got login successful. So simple thing is to set up the proxy configuration and use proxy chains to access the hidden network. All right. Again, you all know that there is port knocking concept. So to unlock FTP SSH port, so if you perform the scan on port 22, you will see that the port is closed. We already did that on that day. How to unlock this one? You need to knock the ports in a specific order. We already did that. So I'm going to repeat the steps once again. 2022. Connection refuse, connection refuse, connection refuse. Now if we go on and map, the same exact things that we did before, my dear friends, but this time you must take advantage of doing it through tunnel, right? Now to connect to this SSH, you can actually use Muggle credentials that I already shared with all of you. So SSH Muggle @10.20.20.16, right? Yes, Muggle as password. We are there onto the target device. In fact, Kali Linux directly don't have that access, but through this tunnel, we are able to do it. Now let's wrap up this particular thing with two more examples that I want to give you. Before proceeding on to that, I just want to give you 2 minutes time. My dear friends, please do go through the things that we did so far and let me know the questions that you have. I will answer them before I move on. Okay. So let me give you 2 minutes time. Please go through the notes and then raise all the questions. After answering your questions, I will move on to the next two things that I want to discuss at this point.
So the VMs that you have used today, is it shared, Jayant?
Yes, Metasploitable 3, you can actually download it from internet. So let me show you from where you can download. So you can simply go on Google and search for Metasploitable 3. Download. This is a really good thing to use apart from Metasploitable 2. You can also replace this Metasploitable 3 with Ubuntu. Right? You can set up whatever mission you want. Say you can do Metasploitable 2 here, HS box that I already gave you, and HSV box here. So whatever way you want, but Metasploitable 3 had a lot of vulnerabilities. You can go with this quick start setup to set up Metasploitable 3. Please make sure that you have VirtualBox installed. Right? This is the process. You need to have VirtualBox installed. If VirtualBox is installed on your host machine, then open terminal on your host machine and run these commands. If your host is Windows, you must run these commands. If your host is Linux, you must run these commands. That will automatically put both Metasploitable 3 Windows and Ubuntu onto this panel. Something like this. You don't need to do anything else. Simple steps. You can run these two things and you'll have these two devices up. Please be patient because that process takes a lot of time. Metasploitable 3 Windows is somewhere around 8 GB or so. So it takes a lot of time. And the same thing applies for Metasploitable 3 Ubuntu also. There are so many services, so much configuration done. That is the reason why these two things will be of heavier size and not like Metasploitable 2. Okay, this is the process to set up Metasploitable 3 and HSV box I already shared with all of you, right?
For VMware, would be different.
Yes, for VMware, this will not work. The prerequisite for this Metasploitable 3 quick setup is using VirtualBox. If that is not the case, you can take steps that are mentioned on the GitHub page, right? To build everything from scratch. That is the tedious process. That is the reason why I recommend going with quick steps. So there is a lengthy process to build. There are build scripts that you can use to build it from scratch. But for this one, the prerequisite is VirtualBox. So they keep on updating this particular page. So new vulnerabilities will be added onto your VirtualBox. But that will not be applied for the quick one that you already built. If you want, you must build it right from the scratch once again using this process. And I think once you can go do it, like once you set up this normal Metasploitable 3, for example, you use VirtualBox and then set up this, you can export your VM and then try setting up it on VMware. Okay. Okay, my dear friends. Let me give you 2 more minutes. I want you all to please go through the content and let me know the questions that you have.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Kinjal. So actually there is a talk for all the participants and mentor by Dr. Sheenu. It's regarding placement and hiring collaboration. So I've shared the link in the chat. Would you please just take this, can you just take this 15 minutes diversion in this, if that is okay with you all?
Jayan sir?
Hello, sorry, I missed someone's question. Can you please repeat? Was
Yes.
I'm switching the network. That is the reason why. Tell me.
Sir, we actually have a placement hiring collaboration talk by Dr. Sheenu ma'am.
Okay.
So it'll be for like 15 minutes or something. Kinjal ma'am has sent the link in the chat.
Okay, okay.
So, I would like everyone to join that for like 15 minutes.
Okay, okay. I think we can break for lunch now and we'll join again at 2:15 or so. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I think that will be convenient for everyone.
Sir, even you will have to join that link.
Me too.
Yes, sir. It's for participants and mentors.
Okay, okay, fine, fine. So can we break the session here?
Yes, sir.
All right.